I've got a treat for you now. Two treats, in fact. One, I'm going to use the PastelMat paper. And I know a lot of you are using PastelMat, so I thought, well, I'll give you an example of one. And secondly, I'm doing a Pelican, which is a very attractive bird. So I'm going to start the ball rolling by using the white. Now I'm using a light green PastelMat paper. I think it will suit the picture rather nicely. Now you've got to be a bit careful with this PastelMat. I've done a few experimental pictures. Just get used to it. And I found that you've got to be just a bit more accurate. It does erase, but not as well as the Ingres paper. So it's best to be as accurate as you can. Now, the reason I'm going down one half of this beak is because the other half, I've got a line that runs down there. And one of the problems I think we're going to find with this, well, it's not a problem, it could be an asset, is the fact that it will hide a line up. So what I'm doing is going down the other side of that line now. I'm not pressing hard with this. You'll see why in a minute. So I found that you can go over it again and intensify the colour. So there we are. Now that's gone on. Okay. And you can still see that line in the middle. So before we go any further, what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to do a very faint grey line in there. I'm using 233 grey here. There we are. Now that gives us the colour. And the other reason why I haven't done it very strong is because I'm going to use ivory as well. This is primarily a white, but it's got an ivory look to it. So I thought, okay, let's go down with the ivory on top. Now that's added another colour. But really what I want is that to be a little bit more intensified. Now this time we go back in with the white again. I'm going to turn it around because I want to interfere with that grey. I want it to be a line, but I don't want it to be very obvious. So now I'm putting the white on stronger, like that. Now I suppose if I was really fussy, I would use the same coloured PastelMat. But I thought, I know that a lot of you like the coloured paper, so I thought, no, well this time I'll do it on coloured paper. I'm breaking several of my rules here, aren't I? That looks okay. That's the first colour in. Now there is another one, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to put a grey line in here, because on this side it's also white. Extend that one up to there. So we want to put the white. No, I won't bore you now. I'll just put this one in again using exactly the same system. So you'll come back in a little while and that will be done. And then we'll work on the next colour. But I'm going to use the same system. I'm going down fairly lightly to start with, using the ivory and then intensifying the white. And then the other thing that I hadn't showed you this yet, but I'm also going to blend it. I found that the PastelMat doesn't blend quite as well as the Ingres, but there are other advantages which I shall point out as we go along. And I've found that's the idea of that. And there'll have to be all sorts of things happening to that line in a little while, but let me put the white in there and finish that off. I brought you just a little closer now. I'm just going to go over that line again. This time I'm using 175. But But this one, I want it to be much stronger. Now this is the division between the beak. So it does need to be stronger, and that can come all the way down to the bottom. But I don't want that line to be any stronger than that. Once again, it's a little blend. Maybe just a little bit. If you want to weaken, all you have to do is put a little bit of white on. So I want it to be stronger, but I want it to not be quite so in your face. That's perfect. Okay. Now why I haven't finished that one off, the reason I haven't finished that one off, folks, because at the bottom it's grey from about here onwards. It fades then from white into grey. And that's going to be very dark in the end. And just here on the tip of the beak, sorry. Now that, I suppose it is his nose really, isn't it? Now, I also want to put another colour on here, which is really attractive. And that's a yellow. And that comes round like that. Now into that, it's black on top of the grey. Like that. This is 175 again. And right on the tip of that, it's a little touch of orange. Right, now what about in there? Well, we want a little bit of white here, just on the bottom. And then we want a red. Now the red I'm using is 191. I could have had a stronger one, but I felt that this was, I wanted to mute it a bit, so it's white at the bottom, and then you know red doesn't like anything underneath it, so I've made that. Let's put a little more white there as well. That's great. Now the red also is underneath. Now I did say that red doesn't like it underneath it, but this is not really red. It's more an addition onto the beak, so it doesn't appear to be that strong there, not like that. And in fact, let's put just a little more on there. That's what it looks like. And right at the bottom I've got a 193 here, which is a lot stronger, and that can make it just a little bit richer down there. And you can put just a spot of that in here. Really attractive animal. Like that. Right. Now what about that? Well, that is dark. Now I'm going to make it, sorry, it's red. Red and grey. So let's put the red in. But we also want it to be 175 as well. And that's what it looks like, with a touch of colour shaper. Just to blend that home. And I think that's going to have to be a lot darker, that division. I use 175, but I think we have to use a black. But I'm going to do something a bit special with that, because if you come down with the colour shaper on the bottom side of that, you blend it out slightly into the white, and that gives you a really attractive impression that it's overlaying. You see what I mean? It's not just a line. When is a line not a line? Or when it's a division, or when it's a division in a beak. And we can just I don't think we need to do very much more. That looks good to me. Anyway, that looks great. What's going to look better is if I do this bit. Now this is a bit hard. I've got to tell you, this is going to have grey on it here. And I'll do a little bit of it, then I'll complete it. What I would do is come on the outside edge, because if you did go over the top of the line, it's not impossible to get out, but it's not easy. So I found on my experimental areas that I didn't want it to be, I didn't want to have to rub it out off the edges. Now that's grey, but on top of that I'm going to put ivory. No, I'm not. I'm going to put 182. And of course, you've also got to bear in mind the paper that we're using. I'm using a green paper, so you're going to have a slightly greeny influence on it. Now, on top of that, I'm using the 175. And then what I'm going to do is blend it. And you're probably going to say to me, how on earth do you work out the colours, Colin? I don't really know, folks. It just happens. Now, that's not the colour I wanted to finish up with. What I'm looking for is the red. Just a little bit. I don't want too much red. Yes. Otherwise, I'd put the red on. But I want it to be that kind of influence. And then we'll come back in with the 175, darken it a little bit more. That's the colour, believe it or not, that we have on the picture. I'm doing that because I do need that to be just a little stronger. But that's the colour that I want this to be. So, you see why I didn't do it all. It's a long job. So I'm going to follow that colour through. I'll just remind you what I used. I used grey. I used 182. A little bit of 175. And I used red on top of that. And I blended it. Then I worked a little bit more 175 in, but I won't bother showing you that. You've already seen that. Okay, so I'm going to come all the way down using that, finishing that off. Then I'm going to do this bit in here, which is red. And the red will go on directly here to show you. In fact, I might as well do that. I'll put that red in, but it's not going to finish like that. We're going to darken it down a bit. Okay, so I can do that and that. Now this needs to be darkened. I'm using the 175. I put some white on that side of it, which there's going to be white down there, just to give us a stopping point. Now that looks good. I just wanted just a little more red. You can use the red as a blender here. That's the colour that I'm looking for. I've already gone around the edges, and I did that with the black, like that. And that goes into there, like that. Now I'm using 175 here. You could use black, but I think it's safer to use 175. And what I want to do is just draw out the area around the eye, because it's quite critical, that. Okay, and then I've already started there. So that comes up and meets that, like that. And then this comes up here, and then down there, and round like that. Now all of that's got to be filled in, but before I do that I'm going to put that black line there, because I'm going to lose it otherwise. I think perhaps it might be a good idea to do this in black grey to start with, and then put the 175 on top of it. It's easier to get grey out than it is 175 and the very dark colours. Well, that looks alright. Yep. Okay, now I can fill it in. But actually you don't fill it completely, that's why I put the grey on. It's got traces of lighter colours in it, especially around here. So it looks more like that. In fact, it might even pay us to put just a little spot of white in there as well. That's the impression you get. Like that. Oh, what about the eye itself? Well, this is very tight, so I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to do it with this sharpened white. You won't do it with a blunt one. And right in the middle is very dark. And I'll use 175 for that. Perfect. Now on the outside here, it's red. There are spots of colours in it, a little bit of yellow for instance, just a little spot of tone, like that. And around there, I'm going to use the very dark 193 for it. And I managed to do that. Just pick up that. And there's I've got a very strong white somewhere. Yeah. Put that in there. That's it. Now on the outside here, it's white. So let me do that. It's all over. The only difference is just here it's a stronger white. I'm going to put other colours on here, but I want to put that in a little stronger because that's like a light bulge there, and then the rest of it will be like that all over, and then on top of that we'll be putting ivory. So let me do that. That comes right down to here. And that's what I'll be doing all round there. Now on top of the white goes the ivory. This round circular movement that I used to show you with the Ingres paper, you can achieve that in the same way with the PastelMat. Because although you haven't got a tooth in this, you've got a raised surface, so you've got to push it into it. And this is the area that I said that I wanted to be lighter, and I put a lot of white on there, so you can still put the ivory on, but you can see it's just that little bit brighter. Now I don't want it back there yet. I've put that in there, that little tuft, and I should be expanding that in a little while. And that comes down to there. Okay, now the next colour. And what I'm going to use here is the ochre. This is yellow ochre 183. Haven't used it yet, but that can go on top of the ivory and white, but I would leave that little bit of there white. Now we're coming to that area of light. So what we want to do is to put it in just a little stronger there. And it can go over the top of the white, but again, because we put the white in there nice and strong, it's still going to be lighter. Now behind here needs to be just a little spot stronger. Except that bit there, close up to the billy do on top, or what you call them, tuft. And then we can just fill it in. And this is where I think it's a good idea to use a colour shaper. Now, let's get it out. Get rid of all the dark colours on it. We don't want to put that on. That would be fatal. Now you've really got to make sure that this is clean too. I did at one point in time, when I was using the PastelMat and demonstrating it to myself, I had a little bit of black on the end and it transferred itself. I learned my lesson, as you do. That can be swirled in the same way. And we want that to be a little lighter again, so back in with the white. And a little bit of light on the top. And I think that will do. Except one exception, and that is I'm using just a little touch of orange. Just there, which I think looks really nice, and I think we could probably put just a little bit behind here too. There we are, done. Now what about those tufts? Well, let me just see if I can show you. Now normally I say to you, if I was using Ingres paper, don't put this in, because you'll find that the background will rub it out. But we can't do the same kind of background that we can with Ingres paper. So we have to do a more impressionistic background with it. I'll explain that to you better as we go on. So we can just afford now to make that just a little bit more adventurous, like that. Great. Now that comes around. Right there, we've actually got a very dark colour coming in here. So just make sure I've got that solid. Yes, it's. I'm going to go straight in with the. Shall I put the grey on? I ought to really. Yes, grey first. It's grey, but it's also a little grey there. Like that. But here, it's solid. Well, I say solid, but it's not actually solid. Let me show you what I mean. It's solid there, but just there, where we have the white and the grey merged together. Like this. And we're putting a dark colour on here, 175, and the same thing happens there. Okay, so that's. Let's show you that, what I mean by that. The 175, it's fairly even there, but it starts to splinter off as we get to here. So you get that effect. But at the back, it's solid. So I work my way down there. It goes right down to the bottom. Now, just to give you some idea of what happens, just there is where we have the end of the white. And then the grey takes over beneath that. Okay, so let me do that, and then I'll bring you back in, and then we'll be looking at doing the back of the animal, the feathers at the back and the bottom. Not far from finishing now. Now, just to finish this off, you put a little bit of black about halfway between this dark area, and then fade it in. It gives you a nice round look to the neck. Fade it in there. There you go. Done. Isn't that coming along well? Now the next thing we're going to be doing is the feathers at the back. I've drawn in the lines, the outlines of the area that I'm going to be doing. And let me just show you how we start off life. Just along this back edge, I want this to be just a little darker than this area in the front. And the area in the front, I'm going to use the ivory pencil. Now you need to use round circular movements. I'm very familiar with this if you've studied my other pictures. It's a nice action. It works with the Ingres paper really well, and it works with this too. The thing is, if you go back and forth, you tend to let me just show you what I mean. You don't get that same intensity if you've got a large area like this. So I'm going to avoid going over the grey for the moment, because they are my areas that I should be wanting to refer to. I do all of this. I won't be doing the bottom feathers here at the moment. I'm just concentrating on the back feathers here because they're really interesting to do, and you'll find fascinating how I get the colour or end up with the colour. So what I'm going to do is do half of this. I'll do the other half, but I'll do this half first to show you how, and you'll be able to compare one with the other. Now I can now continue with my grey, but I don't want to make this too strong. I want it to be a little lighter as we move down, like that. I want this area to be lighter, so much so that I'm now going to put the white pencil on this area. Doesn't look anything, does it? I bet you're thinking, how on earth is he going to turn out? They're going to end up to be feathers, because that's what they are, folks. Another colour which I'm going to use is 182. What I'm building up to is an overall tone. I don't want much here. Remember, these have got to be light, and we'll be putting light back on here again in a little while. And now time for the colour shaper. Now the colour shaper, same movement really. You've got to blend this into the paper. Like that. Now that's basically a ground colour. So into that we've got to add more colour. So I'm going to come back in with the ivory. Because I've put that base on, it goes on a bit smoother, as you can see now. So I pushed it into the paper, and that can again travel up to there. Like that, and once again put the white in again. Like that. And on the top, a very surprising colour, 175. Let's start off by, now the thing is, what I don't want to do here, I don't want to make this area too dark, simply because on that neck area, which I've done, I want to see it, so just to make absolutely sure, I'm just going to blend that in. Make sure that I can see the difference between the two, and I can there, so that's good. Okay, let's continue. This comes up, and it'll... Remember, this is going to go all the way up the top, but I'll do that second half in a minute. Now this drops down to level there. Alright, and blend it immediately. And this blends into the colour underneath. So now what we have is a nice dark top and a graduation coming down there like that. Now that's more or less it. I'm just going to make it just a little bit more ochre. So bring in the grey again, and the 182. Lovely. Now I'm going to complete this now. Bring down this colour into here. Now why I'm doing this, folks, is because I want this ground colour that I'm producing now to be the shadow of the feather. What do you mean by that, Colin? I'll show you what I mean by that. We now need just the white. Just before I do that, I've lost a line. You see what I was talking about earlier? It's so easy to lose these lines. I managed to keep these, but I lost that one. Unfortunately, I know where it went. That's like that. Now, go back into the white now. Now the white, and now what we're doing is producing the feathers. But we can now continue them like that. fade as they get into that dark area, they can fade. And then we then put, this is 175 again, 175 in here. And then we use the colour shaper to bring that. When's a line not a line? How many times have you heard me say that? When it's a shadow, folks. And that can come all the way up there. Just a little more. There we are. There we are. Now, I'm going to complete that. There's no need for me to narrate this. I'll be working my way along there, and with my usual stop-start action. So let's just put a little bit more grey on there and start the ball rolling, as I did before. And what you'll be able to see now is we complete this and arrive at that. Now that's the finish of the back feathers, but what I'm doing now is just running the 175 down the edge of this to make it just a little crisper. And then pull from there. And then just pull some of the dark, just to make the feathers look a little bit more interesting. Another thing you can do here, because it's very colourful, we can add just a little bit of 182 in there. Just, again, to add colour. And there we are. that's the finish. All we've got to do is the remaining feathers. Now we've got the bottom half to worry about now. I'm just adding this is 175. What I want to do here is just make a couple of more positive lines. You'll see why I'm doing that in a little while. And I've done that. We can now finish off the bottom of the neck. And what happens here, the area there is grey and followed by 175. Like that. Right, now I'm going to bring that right down to the bottom because I'm going to put some white feathers on this in a sec. So I want to have a nice strong edge. And straight away we start putting the white feathers in. Now this is, you'll love this bit, this is really great fun. We literally are putting the feathers in with the white, and we'll be going over that, or in between that, should I say, with the dark grey in a minute. And they go all the way along. This is why I put that line in there, because they all also go above the line. Right, now what about this areas above the line? Well, they're slightly different. They're sort of curl round like that. And that belongs to the top of this. And let's just put those in before we complete the rest of it. That's a little bit of white on top. And I think what we'll also do, we put another line in there, another feather. And also there's a bit of grey on there. And a little bit of ochre on there. Colour shaper. And then the white. Like that. All right. Where was I? I wouldn't mess about with the grey here. I'd go straight in with the 175, because the fresher you can leave this, the better it will be. Follow the third feather. I said third direction, then I meant feather direction. Now we're going to blend this very lightly in a minute, and you can imagine what's going to happen. We're going to lose all the white. Well, we won't lose all the white. Some of it will remain, but we've still got to do that to make it look more natural. But we can bring the white back again. That's one advantage I've found with the pastel mat. The light goes over the dark. And as I've said many times before, there's quite a lot of artistic license. When you've got pictures like this, you can only represent what you see. You can't and it wouldn't work if you tried to produce the actual. Now that back in here, and we've got to marry those up somehow. That looks as though it's going to work. Like that. Now the colour shaper. This is where we've got to be a little bit more careful. We'll stop halfway along. You can see how this is being produced. You see all the colour is being merged together, but we've still got the white. So what we can do in a minute is bring the highlights back. But I think you'll agree it does look feathery, doesn't it? Lovely. And now we need to put some more depth in before we put the white back in. Under there, where the feathers would be laying on top of these, we need just a little bit more depth. Now, I'm not going to do any more because it will spoil. What I need now is a nice sharp white. So have I got a nice sharp white? Yes, I have. And what we're doing now is picking up the highlights of those feathers. Do we blend it again? No, we don't. The only thing I would do is run the 175 along the bottom there. It won't look as though it's in the water if we... There'll be a certain amount of shadow there as well. Just put just a bit of a shadow on. And that's preempting the fact that we're now going to put our little penguin in water. So there we are. Let me give you a longer view of that. Right. Now the water. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start down here. And I'm going to use the white pencil, put our little ripples. Now the PastelMat doesn't work the same way Ingres does. You can't blend it so well. I mean, you probably could put soft pastel on, but I think that would be really tricky. So what I'm doing going as far as there with the white. Now I've already got the green paper, so that will help me. I don't want to do too many because I'm going to put other colours in here. Now as we go back, we get a little lighter and a little sparser, like that, until in the background we just put just a little bit, like that, and we leave the rest. Like that. Now let's just do that up there again. It's up to you folks, if you want to go a little higher you can, but I would fade it away. So it is very faint. So it's here where you've got it like a halfway between this one and that one. But as I said, the green paper that I'm using here, that was why I chose it. It gives you a very good representation of water. So let's complete this. If you're wondering, are we going to reflect all of this? Yes, we are. I'm looking forward to that. Now I think we can probably be just a little bit more bold with some of our white. Now just pick your spots. I wouldn't come any further, that's fine. Maybe a couple along here too. And keep looking back on it. You think, does that look like? Yes, it does. That looks pretty good. So now bring some grey in as an alternative. And that can weave its way in between the white. I'm not worrying too much at the moment about the reflections of the Pelican in the water. Just more concerned now. Exactly the same thing applies to this. When we go back, we fade as we go until we get to there. And I wouldn't even go any further than that. I'd stop there. Now you may elect to do water differently to me. It's up to you entirely. But I don't like to overdo things. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, all I need, except now we need some blue. So blue, same as the grey. Put the blue in. And it can mix in with what we've done. It can either go in on its own, it can go between the two, whatever. And again, that will again fade as we get to there. Now, you're probably asking yourself, is Colin going to blend this? Well, Colin is going to blend it, but it won't blend as well as Ingres, remember. Now, bearing that in mind, we're looking at an artistic impression of this, so we can blend it, but it won't completely blend. All it'll do is that, and do what I'm doing. If you've got the flat colour shaper, that might be working better than this, but I'm sticking to this for the moment. You see? Slight blend, but not overly. Now you've got to be careful here, because what you don't want to do is touch the Pelican. But I think that is pretty good. I'm not going to put any more colour in it. As we go back here, that can just fade away. Now, what about the reflections? Because that's what we need to do. So, exactly the same idea. We're pulling this, remember. That's going to come down to about there. And we want that to intersperse with the white and the blue and all the other colours. Like that. Now that's reflecting that. What about above? Well, we've got ivory, haven't we? So let's put a little ivory in the water, and that will reflect the ivory of that. Now I wouldn't do any more than that. Do I blend it? Yes, I do. It's really just smudging it a bit rather than blending, because you see it doesn't travel very well. And I'd leave it at that, folks. I wouldn't do any more than that. What about this one? This is a tricky one, because if you, and to give you an idea, if you come along from here, you'll see that if you put it there, it'd be reflecting into that. So what we've got to do is go that much above it. So imagine it's there, 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 there. That's where the first mark's going to be. And of course it's going to be, do that again, make sure I've got that right, yep. It's going to be a little bit of yellow for that. It's going to be a little bit of red for the beak. Don't overdo it. You'll get fed up with me saying that, won't you? And a little bit of depth, because we're going to be reflecting this too. like that. And that little bit, maybe that little bit on the top would be reflecting, but it wouldn't do very much. And now, folks, I'd leave it at that. I wouldn't do any more. Do you blend that? Yes, you do, but not overly. A bit of orange as well, really nice as well. That's a bit of orange, yeah, a little bit of orange in there. Want to make it as colourful as you can. Now, I like that. I think that is really nice. And I wouldn't do any more. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed our pastel mat presentation, and I look forward to seeing you again on another picture very, very soon. Bye for now.